Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement. Good day and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. I am Phillip Sydney. My guest today is Mr. Eden Compton, who is the coordinator for special projects in the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Production, Fisheries, Cooperatives, and Rural Development. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sydney. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, definitely.
It's always a pleasure. Yeah.
There are many projects that the ministry is involved with.
Yes.
Today we are going to zero in on the Youth Agri-Entrepreneurship Program. It's a program that began about 2.5 years ago, conceptualized by the former government under the stewardship of former Minister of Agriculture, Ezekiel Joseph. A very good project. Tell us, give us a little background into the project for those persons who probably are not familiar with the project.
Okay. I want to start by saying that the project was conceptualized in 2010 and also approved to be funded by the CARICOM Development Fund to a tune of somewhere in the region of over 3 million Eastern Caribbean dollars to start. Following the conceptualization and the approval of the project, there were a number of setbacks. The first one had to do with equipment, for example. The decision was taken, instead of buying 4 tractors, let's buy 1 tractor. But when you interfere with the scope of a project, and there's an associated cost, so it affects a lot, quite a few of the components and also the cost, and you have to seek approval from your donor agency. That takes quite a bit of time. The second setback was deciding that there should be a livestock component. There was no livestock component before. It was open field production and protected agricultural production to include greenhouse production and hydroponics. But it was quite a good decision because meat processing facility is being built in the south of the island currently. It's almost completed, and consideration has to be given to the throughput for that facility. So, and because of that scope change, of course, there had to be a time lapse to seek approval from the donor agency again. And of course, once that came through, it was already, say, 2013. It was already 2013. The third one had to do with the land. The Ministry of Agriculture does not own land. It's true that government owns land, and there's also land owned by the Crown. But of course, one has to go into some sort of negotiation, both with the Department of Crown Lands and with Invest St. Lucia. That in itself took another year, from 2013 into 2014. In the meantime, participants were already selected and trained in 2012. And it's now 2014, they've not been involved in production activities. So it was a sort of the cat before the horse kind of situation. But from 2013, we've been trying our best. The ministry has been trying desperately to try and put things back on track so that the program could start, hopefully, before the end of this year. Of course, sites have been selected. There are 4 sites at Roseau, Marbella Valley in Dennery, Riverdore in Choiseul, and also at Beauséjour. Although there is 1 site that we decided that is not suitable because it has been embroiled in a long-standing dispute for the longest while, and also it's flood prone. So a request has been sent to Invest St. Lucia for an alternative site at Beauséjour, and it's currently being considered. And once this is completed, then we are going to be moving ahead as speedily as possible. There has been some subdivision that has taken place at Roseau that has been completed. Marbella Valley has been completed, and also at Riverdore, subdivision has been completed in areas where the participants will be involved in livestock production and greenhouse production. And of course, there's still the felling of a number of trees that has to take place. Following that, it will be the construction of all the collector drains and the desilting of drains and all of that. Once this is completed, the last phase, or the phase before the last, I must say, will be the infrastructure, you know, the irrigation infrastructure for the persons who are going to be involved in open field production. Also greenhouses for those who are going to be involved in greenhouse production. Some greenhouses will be arriving at the end of this month. And also the procurement of the materials for persons who are going to be involved in livestock production. Because there's an arrangement in place where the materials will be provided for the young persons and they will provide the labor. The last phase, I must say, will be training. I mentioned that the participants were trained way back in 2012. But of course, it's quite a long time, and there will have to be some retraining. So the ministry is working closely with NSDC, the National Skills Development Center, to put that training together. And parallel to that, there will be a mentorship program where participants will be linked to mentors to guide them, particularly where it relates to the investment, the management of the investment, to treat it as a business, and also for emotional support and skills. So we are hoping, fingers crossed, that we should be able to start by the end of this year.
But one of the main objectives of that program is to bring in young people to sort of, well, how should I put it, resuscitate agriculture and to continue the process where the aging farmers are now going out of agriculture. So that is to replace the elderlies, if I may say.
Yes, to replace them over time, because there are some of them that are still doing some good work, you know. So we can't replace them now, but gradually over time. Yes, because we know the average age of a farmer in St. Lucia is somewhere in the region of, say, on average 55 years. And that is coming from the 2007 census, and we're in 2014. So obviously the situation might be worse. So the ministry obviously had no choice but to come up with a project, soon to become a program, that would help over time replace those farmers, you know, but not only replace them, but improve the level of technology associated with agriculture, improve the level of efficiency, right, so that we can there can be more production and also more productivity, so that, you know, we can reach a point where the agricultural sector would be modernized, transformed, and diversified, because we've been fighting to diversify the agricultural sector for quite a while now. A lot of diversification has taken place, but of course we need to increase that pace of diversification.
Because at this point, I think that the young farmers, somebody told me you need to sexy up agriculture now. In other words, get the young people involved in agriculture, not the drudgery way, but looking at new technology, you know, so that, you know, we are in the IT age, yeah? So we need to introduce that to them, right?
Yes. We obviously have to look at new technology. You're not going to be able to attract young persons into agriculture doing the things that we used to do before. If you go to any farm in a developed country, for example...
But hold our thoughts. We are moving fast.
Yes.
You are watching Agriculture on the Move. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Smart choices when you shop lead to happy, healthy families when you eat. Always choose fresh local fruits and vegetables from producers you can trust, packed with all of nature's nutrients, fresh from your local farmer. St. Lucia's fruits and vegetable producers meet every government standard for health and safety with fresh local food products straight from the ground to your plate. When you choose St. Lucian grown produce at your local grocers, you choose a healthy lifestyle for your entire family.
For my vocal, I eat local. What's in my dish? Green vegan saltfish. Buy fresh, eat fresh. Yeah!
St. Lucia's farms produce an abundance of fresh quality fruits, vegetables, and ground provisions. Highly nutritious and incredibly tasty. Eating right together when it's most important. Healthy families, buy fresh, eat fresh.
Welcome back to the program, Agriculture on the Move. Mr. Compton, you're talking about the modernization of agriculture. I think that's the way to go now, because in order to get young people involved in agriculture, like I said earlier, the fork and the man-made equipment, as I may put it, yeah. You know, we need to you know, graduate to another level. And I think that's where we need to modernize agriculture. We need to have, you know, greenhouses. And when I'm talking about greenhouses, I'm talking about, you know, the technology of greenhouses. I mean, not what we have here.
Yes, certainly. And that's why one important component of this project is the sourcing of equipment and trying to look at the technology that's available that we can apply now and how we are going to improve that technology over time. So this is why you know, the ministry is going full speed ahead with bringing in as much equipment as possible to attract those young persons. They're not going to go back and use a fork to plow the land again.
That's correct.
So make that equipment available to them. And as you might know, we have implements that are here in St. Lucia.
Yeah, I was told that you all received some new equipment.
Yes, new equipment and implements that are here. Somewhere near the end of the month or the beginning of next month, there's more equipment, a tractor that will be arriving, 20 greenhouses, and it's just not the tunnel-shaped greenhouses that we normally have. These are greenhouses that are designed for, you know, the whole climate in St. Lucia. So all of these were taken into consideration, and gradually over time, we have to try and move to a point where we can computerize agriculture, you know, because you go to any farm, for example, be it in Europe or the US, a farmer doesn't require several employees on his farm. Correct, he can simply sit in his office and then, you know, for a click of a button, he can fertilize, he can apply with, you know, he can manage his weed control, correct. You know, he can provide irrigation.
That's right.
On his farm.
The equipment you all received in terms of operating those equipment, are you going to train the farmers to do that, or are you going to be hiring people to operate the equipment and to do land preparation and other things like this?
Yes, both. The smaller equipment like the rototillers, for example, the participants will be trained. Of course, they'll have to be monitored. Will be trained to handle that sort of equipment, because the ministry cannot employ people to do all of it for them.
That's right.
Yes, but the larger pieces of equipment like the tractors, we already have trained tractor operators. 3 of them, we require 4. So a new one will be brought in. So we'll have 2 tractor operators in the north, 2 tractor operators in the south of the island. The ministry has 3 tractors as we speak on the ground already, so an additional one will be brought in. So we'll have 4 tractors on the ground. So this is going to be basically the first phase of the project, which is funded on the CDF through a grant amounting to a little over $3 million. But the second phase is a much larger grant, which is almost double, is going to be double what the quantum of funds that we have now, some in the region of $6.2 million. So then the ministry will be able to expand that program even much more and bring in more modern equipment. So it will allow us to modernize agriculture the way that it should be. Yeah.
You all began in the project with about 78 trained young people. That's the first phase. In the second phase, are you hoping to go into how many more young farmers?
Okay, the ministry is looking at a total of 100 to 150.
Okay.
So the first phase basically is a pilot project. Okay. And yes, we trained 79 participants, but however, we are left now with 67 because, of course, participants had to wait for quite a while, and you can't blame them. But like I'm saying, with the budget that we have now, the 60 to 67 is fine because it's a pilot project. There is need to establish those participants properly and be sure that they are into production and doing what they're doing well. And when the ministry is ready to expand for the second phase, we can bring in more participants because the budget is larger, and that will allow, you know, much more work to be done. So I think everything is basically on the right track. Yes.
Those persons, I know they had they're working closely with SLDB. I know they had business plans. Where is that now?
Yeah, the business plans have been completed and reviewed. We've had a few meetings with SLDB, and so we are working closely with the bank to see how we can go ahead and submit these business plans, because the training that they had before allowed them to go ahead and prepare their own business plans with assistance from the ministry. So that has been completed. So it's a matter of working closely with the bank now to see how best the bank can provide on the Youth Enterprise Equity Fund, the YEF program that they have. They can provide the necessary funds so that they can start as seed money for initial operational activities. They will be provided with up to $50,000, a maximum of $50,000. Okay. And of course, it's not a loan or grant, it's building equity over time. Okay. So there's no loan to pay back every month. However, every year you'll pay your dividends. And by the 7th year, each participant will be able to go back to the bank and procure their shares, buy back their shares, and become a sole investor in their own business.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
In terms of monitoring, you know, preparing, you know, the way forward, because there must be a program in place in terms of crop scheduling. Technically, who will be guiding those young people? There's the extension division. Is there in the YEP program people who are going to be there to guide those young people along the line?
Yes, yes. Let me start by saying that there's also a mentorship program I mentioned earlier.
You mentioned that, yes.
I mentioned that earlier. In addition to that, the ministry has already identified the extension officers who will be providing advice on various aspects of animal production or crop production and health. So these extension officers will be working solely, assigned to the individual regions, but working specifically with the extension officers. So there will be that sort of monitoring and guidance for them. In addition to that, when it comes to production scheduling, as you mentioned, it's not a situation where the participants will be allowed to produce what they want. That's right. It's basically prescribed production. So you'll have distribution of production, you know, throughout the year. So looking at import substitution, the focus is on crops that we import, but however can produce locally. You know, quite a few vegetables that we import we can produce locally. For example, if you look at livestock, from chicken to pork to you know, to rabbits, you name it, we can produce all of that locally. So then, having said all of this, the production scheduling for crops, that has been completed. So it's like looking at what should be produced when, and the quantities that should be produced at different times of the year. So participants will not be producing what they want when they want.
So was that taken into consideration based on the consumption, say, of cabbage on a monthly basis and the other vegetables?
Yes. The consumption and procurement by consumers.
By consumers, yes.
By consumers at different times during the year. So that's basically where it was.
Hold that thought again. You are watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you know what a GMO is?
It's genetically modified organism.
It's a genetically modified organism.
That's absolutely right. A GMO is a plant or animal organism which contains genes taken from a different plant or animal to create a set of desired characteristics. For example, a gene taken from a fish and infused in the cellular membrane of a tomato to create a frost-resistant tomato. The technology is designed to improve the quality of agricultural produce for consumption, but its long-term effects are not known. Join the Ministries of Agriculture and Sustainable Development in implementing the National Biosafety Framework, aimed at providing information on GMOs and LMOs in ensuring that they are used, handled, and transported in a manner that is safe to the environment and human health.
Welcome back to the program. We are discussing youth in agriculture with me, Mr. Eden Compton, the coordinator of special projects in the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Compton, we get into a real crucial area because that project, for me personally, I'm looking at the longevity of that project. We're bringing in young persons into the project. Like you said, we began in 79 and we are down to what, 60 something. So you can understand the frustration. The remaining youngsters that are going into the program, I have some concerns with marketing. We talked about production scheduling a while ago, and but then to me, most importantly is the marketing aspect, because you don't want these youngsters to go out there. We help them, from seed to production, and then they cannot sell their stuff. What is in place to ensure that they are able to market the stuff? I'm talking about especially not only fresh vegetables, but as far as poultry is concerned.
Your concern is very important. It's a very important one. We spoke about production scheduling a while ago. There is need now to meet with, for example, CFL, looking at the marketing side of it. All those entities that
marketing board
that
marketing board
that
is
procure.
a key role there.
Yes, marketing board, CFL, the hotels. This is absolutely necessary. But it's my opinion that you cannot enter any meaningful dialogue. There has been dialogue before with them. So I think they are aware, they are aware of the situation. But for you to enter any meaningful dialogue, you have to complete all your production scheduling to know what you're going to produce when, so that they will know what will be available to be procured. So the ministry has completed, we have completed the one for crops and the one for broilers, and the Veterinary Livestock Services Division is now working on the one for swine. It's very important. And even the one for broilers, for example, as soon as possible, we are more than ready now to enter dialogue with the processors, the hatchers, the producers, because there is a safety net in place for broiler production of 25%. And of course, that's basically saturated now in the sense that our producers have been able to produce about 25% of our local requirement. All right, for us to move further, we have to increase that safety net slightly. And I'm saying that because if we don't do that, then it will be difficult for the young participants to come in and start production. So we have to move in that direction as soon as possible.
Yeah, because cut you short, because what's happening now, I'm not sure whether you are aware.
I'm aware.
The 25%, I mean, there are farmers right now, because it is supposed to be 6 weeks to production.
Yes.
And then the processors take it.
And they are birds
right
on
now,
the
birds on the ground up to about 9 weeks.
9 weeks, yes.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Right.
You understand?
But this is really good because it shows that our producers have gone. We have moved from producing 10% of our requirement to 20% now to 25%, and there's potential for us to increase. I just want to mention that if you look at the broiler industry, look at bananas, for example. Bananas, the income generated from bananas is what now approximately $20 million. The broiler industry is clocking 19 million.
That's right.
Local procurement.
That's right.
You understand? So there are other emerging industries or developing industries that we have to focus on. So going back to where we left off, so we trying to complete all the production scheduling to enter meaningful discussions. We are ready, and not too long from now we'll be meeting the processors and the hatchers for broilers. Then we have to meet CFL and the hotels, example, for the crops, because that has been completed. And then once we've completed the swine, we can do the same.
Because how for example, can you prevent, the hotels to bring in their own stuff? I know there's a safety net, but is that safety net, effective? All right? Because what's happening now is that you still have the haywire importation of goods, okay, especially vegetables. For example, for the importation bill on cabbage and tomatoes, like cabbage, we imported almost $1 million worth of cabbage for 2013.
Yes.
All right, almost $770,000 worth of sweet pepper. You know, and the list goes on. That's a big kick out there that the farmers can bite in. What is there for that safety net to avoid that kind of, the sale from the farmers? Why is it that they cannot get a market for the crops?
Right, because as I mentioned earlier, you have to have distributed production. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have distributed production, you'll have periods of glut where you have excess.
Exactly.
So when the price goes down now, the farmer is affected at the end of the day.
That's right.
Right? And if you don't have enough, then there's the other issue. Mm-hmm. You have to import. Mm-hmm. You have to import. So this is why the ministry is using the Youth Agricultural Entrepreneurship Program, mm-hmm. so that we can come up with an approach mm-hmm. that will take care. It's not going to be 100% proof, you know, but take care of periods of glut and periods of shortages. So, you know, scientifically, the approach has to be scientific in the sense that you have to actually calculate your,
exactly.
you know, so at the end of the day, you'll know what to produce when, what the demand is going to be like at a particular time. So this is the approach that the ministry is looking at.
So, so in other words, the information out there has to be forthcoming.
Yes, it has to be forthcoming.
And how is that going to be, I mean, how is it going to happen? I mean, who is going to give that information so that the marketing unit will say, okay, we have so much on ground that I will not give you a license to import?
Right. And that goes back to the extension officers.
That's right.
Working on the ground. They will have that responsibility. If you notice, for the youth program, extension officers were actually selected to work, so that all that data can be collected. You can't do anything much if you don't have data.
Exactly.
You have to have data, you know. You have to collect the data. So the extension officers will be on the ground to collect that kind of data for the youth program. But that's not going to be enough. We also have to collect data from all the other farmers.
Exactly.
All the other farmers. Because without the data, we're not going to go anywhere.
I'm saying all of this, Mr. Compton, because I do not want those youngsters to be frustrated. Because you have taken them, they are frustrated now, okay, they're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to get into production. I don't think they should be frustrated again when it comes to the marketing of the
yes.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, and that's a very important concern.
Yeah.
And it has to be addressed. You cannot ignore it, because without the marketing end of it, nothing is going to happen. You know.
Okay, we have reached the end of the program. Any final words from you, sir?
Finally, I would like to reach out to the participants and I do that all the time. I feel bad, but we have to do it. Apologize on behalf of the ministry for the delay in the implementation of the project. The ministry has not turned its back at all. The ministry is going ahead with the implementation of the project. Progress is being made, and we are asking them to be as patient as possible. And hopefully things will happen. Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to thank you, Mr. Compton, for having that project close to your heart. I wish, of course, that project success, and I mean that personally from the bottom of my heart. Yeah. So you've been watching Agriculture on the Move, thanking you, the viewers, for viewing, and the youngsters out there who are interested in agriculture. Agriculture is the way to go. Agriculture is our business, and don't forget, eat fresh, St. Lucia's best. I am Phillip Sydney saying goodbye, and see you again.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.